go someplace else. Not because we're going to coerce you. You should feel morally ashamed of your indolence, right? And leave for that purpose. Ultimately, moral suasion is what governs the destiny of a nation. Moral suasion is far more powerful. Obloquy, ostracism, far more powerful than all the laws in the world. And that's what we need to come to as a people. Not to just be mean-spirited, but to underscore what the difference is between a country that celebrates liberty and gives the strength and robustness and pride by making every person captain of his soul, as opposed to the government dependency and believing coercion and domination is somehow an earmark of greatness. Anyway, I have probably overstayed my welcome, but we have no questions. I don't know whether you want to take the microphone out there to make sure that everybody can hear a question.
The manager told me if you hold it, we can turn the volume down a little bit so I can hold it right here.
All right, well, if you make questions, I don't know.
Okay, questions. All right, JB.
Okay. Mr. Fein, thank you for coming. As a former member of the intelligence community myself, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing both professionally and publicly in fighting back against the surveillance state. It's truly pervasive. What do you think the way forward is? We've seen a defeat with Justin Amash's efforts in the House, both for the political battle against the surveillance state and then also the personal battle for Ed Snowden-Lon and his whole family going forward.
Well, I think politically, we can build on Justin's amendment after the recess and get a majority, certainly in the House. I think the disclosures are awakening the American people daily to the dangers and the outrages of what the NSA is doing. Its insincerity in pledging that they're protecting all of us. You know, they're self-auditing. You know, how about that? They only discovered 2,700 in violations of their own rules. And these with no outside audit. You know, it's like asking you to grade, you know, your senior exam that's dependent upon getting into college. Says, oh, you didn't make any errors at all. That's what self-auditing is. Right? No outside review, right? And then they say, aha, but it sounds like a large number, but we spy on you so much, you know? Tiny fraction of the whole. And they keep more and more spying they do. It shows, well, you know, they don't ever ask the question of whether or not the spying is authorized under the Fourth Amendment in any way. But there's no doubt that there's swelling public opposition to the NSA. Now, the administration, say, is trying to assuage concerns and try to limit the strength of any amendments or curtailment. Now, to show you how obtuse this administration is, or arrogant. After the recent disclosures, the president, remember, he had a press conference and said he's going to create some independent privacy, civil liberties investigation that's going to determine whether or not some of the NSA rules and secrecy needs to be curtailed. And then he said the next day, I've appointed to head the commission James Clapper. The one responsible for lying and perpetrating all the violations. So if that's their sense of reform, we get this. I think that will outrage the American people when they understand really what kind of duplicity is being played on them. And of course, we also got, I'm not sure, the candidates for the biggest lie when Obama said, even before anything that Ed Snowden did, I already had underway an internal review of whether or not we had violations that we contained. I said, Mr. President, I have the Brooklyn Bridge to sell you. Would you like to buy? You really expect us to believe that? Now, the Senate side is a little more dubious, in part because the Democrats control the Senate and they don't want to do anything that suggests that Obama is less than saintly. And we have Dianne Feinstein. She's the one who protests that Ted Cruz was errant when he suggested she needed perhaps a lesson in the Constitution. Remember, she was very tart and said, well, who are you to lecture me? I've been to school before. And when she was asked about Ed Snowden, she retorted in her typical unmasterful way about the Constitution. He's guilty of treason. He has a trial yet? No. Is he indicted yet? No. Let's see, are you playing judge, jury, and prosecutor like King George or King John before Magna Carta? Well, who's Magna Carta? You know? And this Dianne Feinstein, she's probably the worst of the worst. So the Senate is more difficult. But if the people protest vocally, I think that we can get some real reform. But the administration is clever about this, and they'll try to distract attention and delay the vote. And I can guarantee you, when the next vote comes, how many people think there'll be a new closure of American embassies based upon some new secret surveillance by the NSA? They increased chatter, you know, in South Asia. So that just shows the importance of the program. I mean, the likelihood is like 100% that there'll be some kind of phony scare that will try to frighten people against voting in that direction.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you comparing Ed Snowden to Paul Revere?
I compared Edward Snowden to Paul Revere in a letter that I wrote to President Obama. I hope that he understands. Some people don't know who Paul Revere is these days. But this is, and the reason is, and in some circumstances, you know, symbols become more important, people become more important than their actual acts. And I think that Ed Snowden's disclosures was, in his own words, if you watched his interview with Glenn Greenwald in Hong Kong, an effort to signal to the American people, wake up. This is what your government is doing and concealing from you. And now it's up to us with that knowledge. You know, the Leviathan is coming, and it's us that they're targeting. It is us who is viewed as the enemy. And to that extent, I believe that would be a correct characterization.
Well, why do you think Venezuela, China, Russia, some of America's biggest enemies are so supportive of them?
The same way that we're supportive of wretches that oppose them. I mean, why are we supportive of Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia stands for virtually every principle we despise, and we support Saudi Arabia. So they're engaged in big power politics. It's a way that they can thumb their nose at the United States, like we engage in big power politics and align ourselves with every wretched country in the world if it has oil.
So how do you decide then when you want to just give information away that is classified? It's just if you don't like it, then that's good enough reason to do it?
Of course not. We don't believe that you can just give information away. On the other hand, we also believe that just following orders is not a defense. I mean, how could Adolf Eichmann said, listen, I just put these Jews in these cattle cars and sent them off to Auschwitz. I'm just following orders.
You're comparing us to Hitler.
No. I'm establishing the principle. And we do have, it's a principle of military justice, for instance, that you are required to disobey a clearly illegal order. So when those soldiers were told by Lieutenant Calley in Vietnam, shoot all those women and children in the ditch, they should have said, I can't do that. I need to disobey the order. Now, the question is a good one, because it does create this, it's not a trivial question. When does an order become so flagrantly unconstitutional or violative of our principles of government that you are basically engaging in civil disobedience? I mean, we understood that Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, they just decided they weren't going to obey the segregation laws in the South. And the issue here is, was this secret program targeting millions of Americans, held secret that we didn't even know about, so contrary to American principles of justice and Fourth Amendment right to privacy that disclosure was justified? I think the answer is yes. And I think that the American people have said the answer is yes, because well over half say he's a whistleblower, not a traitor. But the question you asked is a very important one, because we certainly can't have a principle, everybody gets to decide what the law is or ought to be, and then violates it with impunity. You have to have some measurable, articulable standards which prevents it from being abusive and turning a government into anarchical. So that's what I'd say.
Liz.